All right, we are preparing live stream. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Doran. We are exactly 2 weeks out from the selection show. It is I guess it's 6:01 p.m. on the East Coast. What is that? 168, 336 hours until we find out the final product. Hopefully, I'm right with my quick math on that. But a lot happened this weekend. Usually, we touch on about 15 games. I put 25 on the spreadsheet, but we're not going to go for like twice as long. We'll bucket a lot of it together. But Graham, what is your first and foremost takeaway from everything dating back to Friday night?
I think the big takeaway going back to Friday night is that we have a total mess at two different spots. We have a mess at the back end of the 2 line up to the front of the 4 line, and we have a total mess on the 11 line to out of the bracket because the bubble is just imploding upon itself. Teams that we thought were just going to have easy hold serve games like Cal lost at home to Pitt. Teams that we thought were desperate to get a home win got them if you're Ohio State, or completely failed if you're Indiana. And so I think we're looking at a bubble that's really weak all of a sudden. I don't think it was the strongest bubble ever, but last week it was actually in a lot better shape than it is now. Teams around the bubble and teams around the 2 to 4 lines just keep losing, and it's making it really difficult to figure out how to place them.
I don't think you even had to specify that there are certain spots where it's a mess. It's just all a mess. The bubble is hideous right now. I tweeted this morning, like, this feels like a preview of when we're going to have to seed 76 teams at some point in the not that distant future, sadly. I mean, Ohio State, if they had lost this game to Purdue, they were going to be at least my fifth or sixth team out, maybe even further. Now they're clear of Dayton. I have them at 41. Graham, you do as well. So they're our top 11 seed at the moment. And that doesn't mean a home win over Purdue is that valuable. It's that we're looking for anybody on the bubble to do anything. And Ohio State finally answered the bell. We already have questions. Ohio State, a 10 seed now from Mr. Skurs. They are very close, as we just said. 2 seeds still on the table for Nebraska. I certainly think so. Graham, you're a bit lower on Nebraska. But I mean, anybody in that 3 seed conversation, I think even down to I probably Gonzaga and Virginia at 15 and 16, which is or 14, 16, somewhere in that range. That's about where the cutoff is for who tentatively could get to a 2 seed. But I think, if you have Alabama or Texas Tech or whoever there as your top 4 seed, they're absolutely still in the mix for a two if they go on a deep run in their respective conference tournaments and or just finish strong. But let's throw up this spreadsheet. Let's throw up. Yes, after that week. Speaking of throwing up, we'll start with the 10 brutal losses. I thought this was crazy that there were 8 teams that were in my projected field heading into the weekend who all lost to non-tournament teams. Like this could have been just a kind of a boring weekend in that regard. We could have had minimal carnage, but we got a ton of it. Of those 8, Graham, which one would you say was the most unstomachable?
I think it was Cal losing at home to Pitt, and I know that it looked really bad to see Auburn lose at home to Ole Miss, but Pitt's really bad. Ole Miss has some talent; they've got a great coach. Nothing about Pitt says that you should be losing that game at home. So that, to me, of all the games, was the one that was really unstomachable. And there's a reason you have them 72, and I just out. They're not even really in consideration for me at this point. They went from in my field to not even being worth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, there were probably other teams I could put in that spot. They're just like I had them second to last in somewhere in that range prior to that loss, and now I just dropped them, and I haven't found a replacement yet at 72 for them. I mean, for me, it was Auburn losing to Ole Miss, even though I did put Cal higher on the list there. But I think that just now we can't justify having Auburn in, even though the metrics still are okay with them after their losses to Oklahoma and Ole Miss this week. I think they went from around a 35 average in the resume metrics to now they're outside the top 45 in like four of the six. Like that's even beyond just now being 15 and 14 overall. Like the resume itself is becoming a bit too much of a problem. So I think we both have them still, unfortunately, in the conversation. I'd love to throw a 14 loss team out, but I think they're still close enough. But they need to win these last two against LSU and Kentucky, and very likely their first game of the SEC tournament just to get to that threshold of being three games above 500 heading into Selection Sunday. Um, let's touch on BYU, who we're now pretty well separated on. I dropped BYU all the way down to my top 8 seed. You still have them on the 6 line. I mean, right there where you have them 23 is where I'm like, dear God, do I have to consider Louisville in this spot? Like it does get ugly there, but I think I'm more willing to kind of throw in the towel on BYU at this point and maybe consider teams like Iowa or I don't know. But how did you still get BYU to a 6 seed?
Well, look at that team Iowa you just talked about. They lost to Penn State. I'd rather lose to West Virginia than Penn State. Same deal. You have NC State up there. I think they're a team I would have looked at, but they lost to Notre Dame. Like at the end of the day, losing to West Virginia is losing to a bubble team. Is it a
Yeah,
strong bubble team? No, but they lost to a bubble team on the road. These things happen. I don't think it's the end of the world. I do think they have a really important game coming up against Texas Tech on Saturday. If BYU doesn't win that one, all of a sudden I get pretty concerned about BYU seating wise because they got blown out at home by UCF without Saunders. They lost to West Virginia without Saunders. And now, if they lose again in Provo, to a team that, Texas Tech's really good. But all of a sudden, we're looking at losing most of their games without Richie Saunders. Beating Iowa State's great. It was a very good win. It's only one. And I think this actually got West Virginia last year is they beat Iowa State too. And that was a terrific win over a team the committee ultimately gave a 3 seed. But it was only one win without DeVries that really caught your attention. I think BYU could be in a similar position if they only have one win without Richie Saunders that really is fundamentally a great win, then I think that could become very problematic seating wise.
yeah. And one win at home in a game that tipped off at like 11 p.m. here on the East Coast. I mean, that doesn't affect Iowa State as much, but I mean, it's tough to go to Provo anytime, let alone when it's after your bedtime. And I think Iowa State was kind of ripe for the picking after that morning finding out they were the last number one seed as far as the committee was concerned. That was a tough spot, and BYU was able to capitalize. But yeah, I think I had them like I didn't drop them a whole lot because of that. I think I already had them at like 27 or 28. I know I had them on the 7 line heading into the weekend, so didn't overly penalize them. A couple questions. Action Natochi, I'm assuming that's our buddy Tony. How high can Florida get for overall? Yeah, I think it's Duke and Michigan at 1 and 2, Arizona at 3, and then we'll see if UConn opens the door for Florida to get to 4 overall. And I can't see anybody else getting a 1 seed at this point. Like even if I guess if Connecticut loses to Marquette and then immediately loses in the Big East tournament, like they could fall out of the running. But if it's not Florida supplanting UConn, I don't think anybody can. Like what we both have Houston at 6 overall, and they just lost 3 straight games. Like we're we're grasping at straws at 6 and 7 and 8 overall right now. Like nobody's really close to the 1 line, but Florida does still have a chance. I think they're going to need help though. And then Mr. Skurs says, keep seeing Belmont being thrown around as a popular upset pick. I thought that was going to go towards a popular at-large candidate. Uh, Belmont does still have a maybe slight at-large. Did they beat? They played Illinois State today, right?
Still
Did they
going
win that
on.
one? Still going on.
We're alive.
Damn. Oh, we're live. Yeah, I think if they get that one, I mean, I know they have quad three losses, but that would be a quad two. That would bring them to 6 and 1 against quad two, something like that. And I think they're 11 and 3 against quad three. Like it's a pretty decent profile compared to some of this major conference 14 loss garbage we're looking at. So I think they have a chance to sneak in as an at large. I think they definitely have a chance to do some damage. I think that's a solid team. I think it's important to note, playing devil's advocate pod. I think it's important to note that the committee already thought higher of Texas Tech and worse of Alabama than we thought consensus. I mean, those were the two teams we were hung up on really heading into the reveal, just because we didn't know what the JT Toppin factor was going to be. We didn't know what the Charles Bediako factor was going to be. And we saw what Texas Tech was 13, Alabama, I guess, was mentioned. Did they necessarily say they were 17 or they were just one of the teams that was close? But I think they've both, I mean, neither of them has lost since then. They've both gained ground. I think Alabama's a pretty solid candidate for a 3 seed right now. And Texas Tech probably should be a 3 seed, if not a 2 seed. We've been talking about them possibly being at 8 overall. Let's touch on these last two, though. In these brutal losses, these were the bubble battles of the weekend. A&M losing at home to Texas to hashtag Rocco Miller complete the road win exchange program. So now both of those teams, that's like their best. That's Texas A&M's best win. Just got a little bit better because they lost at home to Texas. It's kind of that weird catch-22 situation, but Texas A&M is the one definitely in danger now. You've dropped them even further than I have, down to your third to last team in at 44 overall. I still have them as my bottom 10, but I wanted to scrub them even further. What do you think of the Aggies, who I think also have Kentucky and LSU? Maybe I got their schedule and Auburn's schedule mixed up.
Yeah, Auburn still plays Alabama. I heard you say that.
Alabama, that's right.
But Texas Tech, when I look at them, I'm very concerned about the fact we've talked about this before. Out of conference, they had opportunities and they missed them. And one very crucial opportunity they missed was SMU on a neutral court. I
Yep.
think that one could come back to haunt them because, if let's say I have no idea where you have SMU, but if you have them anywhere close to Texas A&M there, which is what I had, I was like, yeah, I'm not in love with this SMU profile because SMU's not winning away from home, and I settled on where I wanted SMU. Then I got Texas A&M right in that same position. And I said, I don't want you in front of SMU because you lost the head-to-head game on neutral court. So I moved A&M back there. I think the committee could look at that. If you look at my overall seed list right now, a lot of these games are based on, or where I have teams are based on head-to-head results. I don't put too much stock in a home win head-to-head, but if somebody wins on the road or wins a neutral court game and you're right there, right up against each other, I do put a lot of weight on that. I think the committee does too, because
Yep.
ultimately they want the results to matter more than anything else.
We got a question from, oh man, I'm going to butcher it. Matt Catabayon. Can San Diego State get in if they win their next two and then make the Mountain West final? Appreciate you. All the bubble continues to be all time bad. Yes. I mean, perfect segue. Good job. We're talking San Diego State right now after their loss at New Mexico. I think technically San Diego State was the auto bid at that point because they were tied and had the head to head over Utah State. But this knocked them out of that now. It knocked New Mexico back in. You have them in even a little bit further than I do. I still think they're very close to the cut line. But yeah, I think if San Diego State wins these next two at Boise State, which I believe would be a quad one, and then home against UNLV, which Utah State didn't win for whatever that's worth. Um, I mean, they still have work to do in the Mountain West tournament. I think they would be the 2 seed, or are they behind New Mexico? It's probably a St. Mary Santa Clara kind of situation where they're probably going to run into the Lobos again, and it'd be great if they could win that rubber match um, for San Diego State in particular. And same with Santa Clara going up against St. Mary's if they run into them again. But we both have San Diego State just a little bit out. If they win these next two, like I said, at Boise, home against UNLV. I mean, we'll see what the bubble decides to do. Who knows when Cal's going to lose at home to Pitt again? That I think they're very much up to the fate of what happens around them, but they would have a pulse for sure. We both are still pretty close on San Diego State.
Yeah, I think they're definitely in the conversation. I do think they're going to be needing to win the rest of their regular season games and get to that Mountain West semi. If they do, the committee's probably going to start making a decision on them one way or the other around that Friday night. And they're probably going to decide by Friday night they're either in or they're out. I don't think they're going to wait for the Mountain West final to go final. I think they're going to call it one way or the other. So, how they perform in that final might not really matter. It might not be an eye
Yeah.
test thing. I think it's just going to be you've either done enough by now or you haven't done enough by now. And I think it's going to be really close if San Diego State gets in the Mountain West final.
Yeah, I think these two teams are close enough together that it legitimately could be like because the Mountain West semi would be on Friday, late Friday. Like committee already is passed out on ice cream, probably not even watching the game. Um, they might just decide whoever wins this game is going to Dayton. Whoever loses this game is out, and that's how they'll like pretty much go into Saturday planning on it. Like you said, regardless of what happens in the final. I mean, I guess they would go to Dayton if they then win the the auto spot, but I think that's probably how I'm going to approach it if we end up getting a New Mexico San Diego State semifinal. So they're both right there along the cut line. Go ahead.
Well, one thing I think New Mexico has that really is going to help them in all of these arguments is they beat VCU on the road. They beat Santa Clara at home, but it was a blowout, complete and total domination. Now they've added this win against San Diego State. You start to compare New Mexico to teams around them, and they're winning these games. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really going to help them. If it comes down to it, the committee's going to say, hey, if we're talking about all these teams for the bubble, they're like 3-0 in quad one bubble games, if that's what we're calling it. And those aren't actual quad one games, but that's what I'm saying. Like in comparisons to teams that are around them, it's not 2-1. They're winning all of them. New Mexico
Yeah.
should be at the top of that list to me, and that's actually why I have them out of Dayton because I think they've done enough in comparison to teams who are on the bubble to show they're a little bit above that.
When we get to our last four in, first four out, I will already admit I forgot that New Mexico beat VCU head to head. So go ahead and swap them for me because I have them at 44 and 45. Question from Mr. Skurs. Which bubble team drives you up the wall at this point with their resume metrics and if they should be included in March Madness or not? I mean, 6 hours ago it was Ohio State for me. I It drove me nuts that they had lost their 10 toughest games and they were still probably going to be like if they weren't playing today, they would have been right there as like last team in somewhere in that range. Now they've gotten that quality win that they desperately needed and they've moved ahead. But I guess now it's got to be Auburn with that 15 and 14 record and still good enough metrics that we have to still somewhat consider them, even if we're like putting a hard line in the sand that we're not going to put them in until they're 3 games over 500. Who would you say?
It's Indiana for me. It's even more than
Mm,
Auburn. It's Indiana. At least Auburn has won some of those games. Indiana
yeah,
really hasn't. I mean, they keep striking out over and over and over again, and at least Auburn's scheduled tough. Indiana didn't schedule tough. Nothing about what Indiana has done says they should be in the tournament for me, except those metrics are just kind of
yeah.
hanging around. And I could see the committee being like, hey, that's Indiana, and look at those metrics. Those metrics are pretty good. We told you how important the WOB was all year long, how important it was. I don't want to see Indiana anywhere close to the field. I don't want to see Auburn close to the field either. But at least I kind of get it with Auburn. Indiana does not deserve a tournament bid, and I'm a little bit worried. I'm not worried, but I hope they don't end up beating Ohio State. And the committee says, yeah, Ohio State's a tournament team. They just beat Ohio State. They belong to go into the field too. I really would not like to see that happen because Indiana simply doesn't deserve it. We're talking about whether Miami, Ohio should get into the field
Yeah.
undefeated. Like, come on. Belmont could be 6-1 against quads 1 and 2 by the time we finish this podcast. If we're letting Indiana into the field, it's just making a mockery out of bracketology in general, and it's just saying, just go with the resume metrics because nothing else matters. I hope they don't do that.
Yeah, that would suck. I mean, they're now 4 and 12 against quads 1 and 2. Just disgusting. Let's move on to happier times. These are the 11 tourney games that we had in the last whatever 48 hours. All these games between teams that are at least now projected to dance. Maybe Ohio State wasn't before their game, but you see the winners are on the left, the losers are on the right. I'll let you pick where you want to go after I go to Florida, just demolishing Arkansas. which changed nothing about either team's seed, funnily enough. Like I still have Arkansas right there in the middle of the five line, still have Florida at five overall, which is I think where they would have been regardless after factoring in Iowa State's loss to Texas Tech. But that was that was a biblical beatdown. And I know there was like the whole Boogie Fland wanted to take it to Arkansas or whatever. So I mean, Boogie didn't even need to play in that game, and they were going to kill Arkansas. I think that said what we've felt for a month and a half now about Florida, that they are, if not the best team in the country right now. I mean, top three undeniably, but that doesn't mean they're a top three overall seed. So I would get imagine that Connecticut does not want to get a one seed and then have Florida as their two seed, but whatever. Which of these games would you like to touch on? We don't need to hit on all of them by any means.
I think the big game of the weekend to me was Texas Tech winning on the road in
Mm.
Ames without JT Toppin. I think it shows that Texas Tech is a force to be reckoned with or out Toppin, which is a very important thing for the committee to see. Secondarily, it does make Iowa State's resume a little questionable to me. When I compare, I just throw Kansas, Texas Tech, and Iowa State, those three, into one head to head comparison. And looking at those three, Texas Tech got one game at home, one game on the road. They split them. Iowa State got two games at home, one game on the road, and they went 1-2. Kansas got two games on the road and one game at home. They went 2-1. And Texas Tech and Kansas both beat Arizona and Houston. For all the committee talked about loving Iowa State beating Houston by 3, Texas Tech and Kansas, I think, have one-upped them. They were more impressive in beating Houston than Iowa State was. So, and they have the wins over Arizona. Add on that, Texas Tech beat Duke on a neutral court out of conference. I think it's getting a little bit interesting for Iowa State. So you can obviously see by where I have them ninth overall. Still impressed with Iowa State's resume. Still think they have separated a bit from Texas Tech and Kansas right now, but it's a conversation. And if Iowa State loses at Arizona, I think it becomes a real analysis of, is this what we want to do? Do we actually, if I'm the committee members, do I want to put Iowa State above those teams who maybe arguably were a little bit better in Big 12 conference play than they were?
Yeah, I got Texas Tech up to a three seed from that. You didn't quite get them there, but you're obviously very close if they're at 13. And for the first time all season, I'm higher on Iowa State than you are. Welcome to the upside down. Yeah, I just have a hard time. Like I try not to fixate too much on what the committee told us during the reveal, because I mean, in years past, it was like 5 weeks after the reveal before the actual product. Maybe now we should put a little more stock in it, because it was just, you know, it was 2 weeks ago, and it'll be less than a month out from the tournament when we got that information. But I have a hard time kicking what was the last one seed down to a three seed, so I just kept them at seven. And I think at the time when I did that, I still had Purdue at eight, and that was part of why I couldn't get Iowa State down any further. I didn't really recalibrate how low I was willing to go on the Cyclones after booting Purdue a little bit after their loss to Ohio State. We should probably touch on St. Mary's and Gonzaga as well before we move forward. But man, St. Mary's, like every metric now, they're 25th, somewhere in that range, like 23 to 27. And I almost was tempted to put St. Mary's as my last five seed. Like what, that happened fast. But they got a home sweep of Santa Clara and Gonzaga. I mean, I think you were a little bit higher on them than I was, maybe even a good bit higher. I had them as like a 10 seed, and now I have them as a six. But they finally have that marquee win that they were lacking for forever. Just like, Ohio State beat Purdue, and I was willing to just instantly vault them two seed lines because of that. And I think that's what St. Mary's did this week. And boy, if they go out and win the West Coast Conference tournament, get two neutral site wins added to their resume against Santa Clara and Gonzaga, they're going to be in the mix for like 17 overall. That happened fast. But you still have Gonzaga as a four, as do I. It's not like all of a sudden St. Mary's is ahead of Gonzaga or anything crazy. But anything you want to say on the Gales or the Zags?
Well, I do think St. Mary's is worth talking about because I obviously have them 28th. Not a bad seed by any means. They're talking about a 7 seed in that position, but it kind of feels like a holding spot to me because we're going to know the full body of work for St. Mary's before the selection committee ever meets. They're going to know everything St. Mary's has. Like I think Rocco says the hay's is going to be in the barn, and that's exactly how I feel about it for St. Mary's. We're going to get that full analysis. And right now, where I have them is kind of, I don't, it's not an intentional hedge, but I think there's going to be a lot of movement one way or the other because right now they have home wins against Santa Clara and Gonzaga.
Mhm.
I want to see them do something big away from home. I mean, you could argue they beat Virginia Tech handily away from home on a neutral court, but is that great of a win? No, it's not. I want to see them do something against a team that's a little bit higher up the bracket. If that's an impressive win against Santa Clara, it adds value. But if it's a neutral court win against Gonzaga, all of a sudden we're talking about 5 seed St. Mary's being on the table, and they could just fly from on the bubble, like literally on the bubble days ago to potentially being a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. And that's one of the benefits to the West Coast Conference, letting them finish their tournament before the committee ever meets.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we had that. Was it last year or 2 years ago with Gonzaga? They were smack dab on the bubble. Then they got that big win. I think it was at Rupp Arena, and then they just like caught fire, and all of a sudden we are like, "Oh shit, this is like a 5 seed now. What happened here?" um, Question from David Nagel, 1999, and I saw this notification on my phone as well. Chad Baker Mazzara just got dismissed, or he left the program. Uh, does that basically extinguish USC's tourney chances? I mean, I think USC was already basically extinguished, but now if they do get onto the bubble again, like, yeah, there's that conversation of, okay, well, they don't have their best player. So do we throw out this data like we did with Tucker DeVries last year? And they're already didn't, they didn't have Rodney Rice anymore, who was key in two of their big wins early in the year. And yeah, I think USC at this point was already toast, and now this, now they're burnt toast. What do you think? Is there any case for the? I don't. I'll take a look at their remaining
I mean,
schedule, but you go ahead.
I guess the alternate look at that is you could say, I mean, we saw what they were like with Chad Baker Mazzara. Without him, they're actually winning a bunch of games all of a sudden. They
Now they're
in the
cohesive.
locker room. All of a sudden, we got a great team on. So, if they finish strong, maybe the team headed to the tournament looks a lot better than the one they've been playing with all year. I guess there's always that argument. But yeah, mentally, I was already out on USC. Not like they're out of the tournament. Like, no, I'm not even considering them anymore. They're going to
Yeah.
have to do a lot to even get on the radar.
Yeah, I had them at like 74 headed into the week. They play at Washington and at home against UCLA, so like no major opportunity to prove anything. I mean, even by the time they get into their Big Ten tournament games that would matter, we're probably already decided on who's going to be in the field. Excuse me. Let's go to these. I also have four big misses. As I said, USC, who every time I see SC, I'm like, Santa Clara? No, USC. Okay. So USC lost to Nebraska. They're now effectively dead. Indiana, they lost that game to Michigan State. I think they've got their work cut out for them. As we mentioned, they're 4-12 against quads 1 and 2. Virginia Tech lost at North Carolina, but because so much other carnage happened, you actually scrubbed Virginia Tech in. I still have them as my first team out. They're right on that cut line. But had they won that game, boy, they'd be sitting at like a, probably 40 overall, maybe a 10 seed. And Seton Hall lost at Connecticut. That's probably the end of the line for the Pirates, but they still get St. John's at home. And they would, if they beat St. John's, I think that would then create a rematch for them with St. John's in the Big East semis. I'm not sure. I got to figure out all the Big East tournament tiebreakers, but they will still tentatively get at least one chance against either St. John's or UConn in the Big East semifinals. Maybe there's still a chance, given how ugly this bubble is. But go ahead and tell me why you still have Virginia Tech in, even though we're only one spot different on them.
Yeah, I think one thing that separates Virginia Tech from these other teams I'm seeing here, and bad weekend for an example for it was Seton Hall because they actually were very competitive against UConn. But I think something that really does help them when the committee digs down, we talk about it all the time when they go under the hood with these teams because they're not going to spend as much time with the teams in the middle of the bracket, but on the bubble, they're going to look at anything and everything. And the Virginia Tech keeps it close consistently. They are not beating tournament teams, but they are playing competitively against tournament teams over and over again. They were leading UNC until late in the half. They ended up tied there, but they were in the game throughout the game. They were never uncompetitive. And I think that really helps them. You look at a team like Indiana, they were never really in that game against Michigan State today. USC got blown out on their home court again by Nebraska. I think that is something that will come up in the committee room is how unfortunate in a lot of ways they are to have lost so many of these games because they do play tournament teams well. Now, I do think they're probably going to have to beat Virginia on the road. I think it's theoretically possible if they don't, if the bubble keeps imploding like this. But it really seems like they're going to decide one way or the other. They're in or they're out because they're either beating Virginia in Charlottesville or they're just not going to do enough. And I think VCU could potentially sneak in there into the field. They'll be an interesting team to watch here.
The good news for Virginia Tech, if they split these last two, that would bring them to 8-10 in the ACC. So, I mean, I assume they'll be playing at least one game before the theoretical dinner time on Thursday cut line. They'll at least get couple more data points in there for better or worse in the ACC tournament.
Yeah. So that
Let's
point, though, I
go
think
ahead.
that's actually a very important point. Early tournament games can be beneficial if you're a team on the bubble. Like, it's actually not a bad thing all the time. Sometimes it's like, oh, you don't want to take a bad loss. That happened to West Virginia last year because they already had done enough, and then
Yeah.
losing to Colorado bumped them down. But if you're a team like Virginia Tech that you think you haven't done enough, you want to add those because we talk about WOB all the time, right? Like when you're on a neutral court against some of these teams, you're talking about like zero point 0.3 WOB, zero point 0.4 WOB. Like that is you win two of those games, all of a sudden you've won pretty good amount of WOB onto your record that other teams simply aren't getting. So you could actually really benefit from what the ACC has done, which is they've eliminated the pits from the ACC tournament. They're not sending them. They're sending you a team where if you beat them, there's actually a little bit of value there.
Yeah, I mean, last year with Texas, right? They were not going to be in, at least we assume not, until they beat Vanderbilt and Texas A&M in their first two SEC tournament games. I mean, that was huge. They probably got, I mean, that neutral game against A&M was probably worth like 0.6, 0.7 WOB. I mean, they probably picked up more than a full win above bubble just from those two games. And it was right when the committee was meeting and right when the committee was feeling sick about West Virginia's showing against Colorado. So yeah, if you'd prefer to get buys and not have to play on Wednesday, but if you're going to and you make the most of it, awesome. It can be a difference maker. And I mean, we've heard from the committee, from Seth Davis, that the results matter of the conference tournaments. I'm not going to change how I approach anything, but I'm I'm willing to put weight on anything that happens until Thursday night.
Yeah, and to that point, Seton Hall, they are clearly out of the field. Not they wouldn't be close if their regular season was the end of their road. But it's not. They could add a decent win over Xavier, a good win over St. John's. All of a sudden, they get to the conference tournament. They get to add a quarterfinal victory on a neutral court that the committee will pay attention to. And if they beat UConn in the semis, they've got a real shot. Like in my opinion, it's almost okay, I won't say it's impossible. This is very, very hard to see Seton Hall doing that, but that's
Yeah.
what you want. If you are out of the field, the more opportunities, the better, because it's not going to work unless you win those games. So, really, you actually want to play earlier in the tournament if you're out of the field, because every data point, every Q2 win you could possibly add before they make a call on you is valuable.
Yep. All right, let's scroll over here to our respective bubbles. You said earlier you don't know where I have SMU. I have them at 43, and I still have A&M at 40. I did consider that neutral court result. If I had been, if it was 41 and 42, I would have flipped them. It wasn't enough for me to, vault SMU or either vault SMU 3 spots or drop Texas A&M 3 spots. But SMU, VCU, New Mexico, and Santa Clara for me. So I'm all about them mid majors. Graham, you've got SMU, Texas A&M, Santa Clara, and Virginia Tech. I believe our only in-out difference though is that I have VCU in and you have Virginia Tech in, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And you
I know
probably
that.
don't have Indiana. Do you still have Indiana at 69, or where are you putting them now?
So I was just gonna say, now that Indiana, I've been saying how important and crucial head-to-heads are to me. That buffer, you just talked about a buffer on the front end. That buffer between Virginia Tech and VCU was keeping me from putting VCU into the field. Now that Indiana has lost and is out of the picture, now I've got a head-to-head direct comparison between VCU and Virginia Tech. So VCU moves into my last team in the field, and Virginia Tech moves to my first team out of the
Ooh,
field.
yeah. Let's do some scrub a dubs. Boom, boom, boom.
And actually, I would put Indiana behind
Yeah,
San
behind
Diego
Auburn.
State and Auburn now.
All right, well now we have like the same bubble. How boring. But no, I love it. And I think I would actually, if I had looked for a team that I didn't already have close to the field to put here, I would have put West Virginia at 72. I think they're probably more legitimate than Cal at this point. I don't think they're quite all the way there, but I think they're getting close after wait, who the heck did they BYU after they beat BYU yesterday. Uh, One question here from Playing Devil's Advocate Pod: does Purdue have to be above Alabama and Nebraska with the two road head-to-heads? Um, Maybe. Graham, you've been like obsessed with head-to-heads today. What do
Yeah,
you say
I
on that?
am, and I actually think it's
I
really
am.
bad news for a lot of teams. Texas Tech at 13th overall for me is it almost feels criminal. There's no way in my head Texas Tech should be 13th overall. But then I looked at Purdue and they lost to them by 30 on a neutral court. And I looked at Kansas and they lost at home in Lubbock to Kansas. And then Purdue won on the road at Nebraska. Those head to heads became very crucial to me because of exactly where I had those teams. So we can go head to head forever, right? Nebraska
Yeah.
beat Michigan State and Lincoln. They also won at Illinois, but I wasn't looking at Nebraska in direct comparison to Michigan State and Illinois because I saw some difference there. I actually feel really bad for Nebraska because somehow they keep winning and they keep slightly falling further behind
Yeah.
because every time I look at Purdue, Purdue is getting worse and Purdue still has that road win at Nebraska. So I think that's actually, unfortunately for Nebraska, Purdue is dragging them down a little bit as far as I'm concerned. And Texas Tech losing by 30 to Purdue on a neutral court is a really bad result when those two teams may be going head to head in a comparison by the committee. But I still think we're going to see a ton of movement on the 2 to 4 lines.
Yeah.
Nebraska could absolutely be a 2 seed. Purdue could still get up to a 2 seed. I doubt it at this point because they're just losing too much in Big Ten play recently. But I could still see teams on the 4 line like Texas Tech moving. Honestly, I could see them 6th overall. Like not even like sneaking onto the 2 line. I could see them getting that high. We have a lot of really important basketball to play over this last week.
Yeah. I mean, I have right now I have Kansas at 14. You have them at 10. That's fine. I mean, it's all kind of a mixed bag from six to, or from really from 7 to 14. I think Houston is pretty solidly a 6 overall at this point, but I mean, Kansas could win like one game and all of a sudden vault to the top of that pack, just like what happened with Michigan State. And I mentioned this, I think I tweeted about it, or maybe I said it on a pod or both, but Michigan State, with that one road win over Purdue, launched from 14th in wins above bubble to 7th, or no, 5th in wins above bubble because they were point 0.7 back of 6th, and Purdue was 5th at the time, so they knocked Purdue down some. And I mean, if you dig that deep into the wob and focus that much on a 0.12 difference or whatever, you're gonna drive yourself insane, and you're gonna start waiting until the morning to think about your brackets because you need that data to update for you. But uh, it's just a testament to how little separation there has been for a little while now between the middle of the 4 line and the middle of the 2 line.
One thing I have my eye on recently is Purdue has not been protecting home court well at all. They almost lost to Oregon. People forget that, but they were really close to a home loss in West Lafayette to Oregon. And so, why do I bring that up? They get Wisconsin still. If they lose that game, that becomes a freeing game for Texas Tech and Nebraska. Now they're no longer tied in that head to head with Purdue. I think they're clearly above Purdue at that point. And so they could start entering into some different conversations. Well, Nebraska won at Illinois and they beat Michigan State. Texas Tech won at Iowa State. Like all of a sudden, there could be a really big up seed movement for those teams too. So, really genuinely believe like don't get too tied into where teams are right now on the back end of the two line and the front of the four line because there's going to be movement. And I'm not entirely sure where it's going to go, but I do feel confident teams are going to move a lot, way more than we're used to seeing teams move in those seed lines this late into the game.
Yeah, I think the top five overall is locked in, and then it's just a mess after that. I mean, even like the 5 and 6 lines as well, like that whole SEC cluster. I think it kind of separated itself a little bit. Now it feels like Tennessee's definitely at the back of it. Alabama is very clearly at the front of it, but still, what do you do with Arkansas and Vanderbilt? Where does North Carolina fit in that mix with the Caleb Wilson factor? It's just, yeah, there's a lot still in play with not much time left for things to change. Any last parting thoughts before we wrap up?
I just I'm more excited for the last end of the regular season than I usually am, just because I know how much movement we're talking about. Like, Kerry, you know this. Usually, we feel pretty good about where our ones and twos and threes and fours are at this point. We're just like we're looking at like back into the three, front of the four. Now we're just moving teams all over the place. And that's exciting for me because it makes the end of this regular season more meaningful than it usually is.
Yeah. And then you go down to the bubble, and it's the same thing. Like usually by now it feels like, pending bid thieves, of course, that's always that factor, but it feels like with a week left before the end of, the regular season, it's like, I don't know, 7 teams fighting for 3 spots. Maybe somebody gets hot and sneaks into that mix, but it's just, oh, like my last 10 teams in, I don't feel good about at all. And there's really not anybody too far gone that even looks like they're worth considering. I mean, as we mentioned, like Cal in Indiana right now maybe is our fourth team out. West Virginia somewhere in that mix, but yeah, there's a lot yet to be decided. But we will. There we go. Stop share. We'll wrap up for today. Uh, did Belmont win? Oh, let's check. Come on, update. Oh no, they're only up by one with 6 minutes left. We can go watch the end of that game. All right. Until next time, take care and enjoy the